righty, daddy. I'm glad you made it back. Hello, everybody. Hello, 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 hello. So, we have on the table questions about the critical race theory. Critical race theory. I was so blessed to be able to talk to our production studio, and we have a short video to talk about the critical race theory. We ended on it a little bit in our first broadcast, so if you're just joining us, we went over our breaking news, and we were toward the end on the critical race theory. There is being so much opposition that 22 states out of the 50 states of the United States, the governors and the Republican parties have raised issues that have almost made it a crime to even mention the critical race theory. And so we thank God on tonight that we're going to present you with a video that you can find on your own afterwards and review it. But we're going to play it on tonight. And this is giving you a little overview of the opposition and the basis of the critical race theory. It is not new. It didn't just come about because of January the 6th. It does have a history, not a long one, but it is a historical theory. And what it is about, I think that all of us, white, black, Chinese, Hispanic, every one of us, saved, non-saved, all of us, especially in America, need to listen to what this historical document is all about. So we're getting ready to cue it up for your information. This is the critical race theory video. It is an overview. So we're going to ask our production department if they can bring up that video. And this is Dr. Kendall Thomas. We're working on the sound to get it right for you. But he's going to give you some key points about the critical race theory. We were working on the sound. We see that Dr. Wells, Captain Wells, is still with us. How you doing, Captain? All right. So we're still having, we're working on the sound again. And we want to welcome Captain Wells. She was real interested in the critical race theory.
Okay, here we go.
The whole purpose of critical race theory is to provide Americans with a way to understand the legacy of racism, even though those stories
It's anti-American training that vilifies white people and demands they apologize.
The best learning for students about social studies and about our democracy and our country is the learning where students can really grapple with the issues and really come to a deeper understanding of how our past informs our present.
All of this revisionist, woke curriculum, you are not going to do this to our children.
Teachers across the country are caught in the middle of the latest flashpoint in America's culture war, critical race theory. So what exactly is it? And why is there a push to ban it in schools?
Critical race theory is a body of ideas and a set of approaches to understanding the history and the present of American society that looks at the ways in which racial unfairness have been woven into the fabric of our institutions.
In other words, critical race theory, or CRT for short, is a legal academic framework centered on the idea that racism is systemic. It first started to coalesce in the 1970s when Black, Hispanic, and Asian legal scholars we're researching the persistence of inequality despite the landmark legal victories of the civil rights era.
The legal scholars undertook a set of analyses and investigations that were aimed at trying to make sense of the puzzling persistence of racism in our legal system, in our political system, in our economy.
CRT has been studied in fields like sociology, economics, and political science. It's been used to examine issues such as housing and educational segregation, unconscious bias, and criminal justice reform.
Contrary to what often critics portray as sort of judging people intrinsically as being racist or not, or holding people responsible for, slavery in the past, it is actually to open up a conversation of how we all inherit and live in a society sort of beyond our choosing. We didn't choose where we were born or what racial group we were part of, and yet we have this common history. How do we understand that history? What does it mean for us? Those are the sorts of questions that critical race theorists were trying to grapple with.
The racial reckoning spurred by the police killing of George Floyd brought the decades-old framework back into the spotlight, as some schools sought to implement reforms that better address race in classrooms.
I think the thing that critical race theory would add to that conversation is that we not sort of confine that horrific example to Derek Chauvin, but to think about how, well, there were other law enforcement officers present, including officers of color, who stood idly by. And so that pushes us to think about, this phenomenon as not simply one of, racism by whites against blacks, right? I mean, it makes us think more critically, more engaged, more seriously around, well, why do these practices happen?
The push against CRT gained steam under former President Trump, when he directed federal agencies to end any diversity trainings related to critical race theory. Though ultimately blocked on First Amendment grounds and rescinded by President Biden, the fight over CRT at the state level is still in full effect.
The focus on CRT is a way to latch onto a concept that very few people sort of really understand, which sounds kind of scary perhaps to someone not, trained in what it means, and latch onto that as a kind of football in this sort of ongoing fight over, the future of this country with regard to racism.
As of mid-June 2021, 21 states have introduced bills attempting to restrict the teaching of critical race theory and or impose limits on how race is discussed inside the classroom. And those limits are often vague.
And instructors, educators, especially at the K-12 level, will just not go there, will not run the risk of upsetting parents or, being misunderstood or drawing the ire of, lawmakers.
In Texas, for instance, House Bill 3979 says teachers must explore current events from multiple positions without giving, quote, deference to any one perspective.
There's language in this bill, like teachers need to present a balanced perspective on current events, for instance. They have to do their due diligence to present multiple viewpoints. But what happens if they're talking about an issue in the classroom and they try to present multiple viewpoints, but the student comes home and tells their parent about the lesson that day, and the parent thinks, well, they didn't do a good enough job of presenting this viewpoint. So who decides when the teacher has done an adequate job of presenting multiple perspectives on an issue? It saddens me and disappoints me that instead of really embracing this opportunity to confront our nation's past and to tell authentic and more accurate narratives about experiences of diverse people in this country, that we're looking to sweep it under the rug. We're looking to erase it even further from our memories.
Are you still interested in a solar-powered generator?
Thank you. If you're still interested in solar. So, critical race theory. Critical race theory. I want to bring up our PowerPoint. Just give me a second here. All righty. We're back to these states that are against bringing up the critical race theory. And then the next slide talks about impact and intent. So I believe Captain Wells wanted to comment on how it will that change things for people that. Oh, there she is. How are you doing there, Captain?
Oh, fine, and you. Thank you.
Good. So the critical race theory, the impact and the intent, I think, is mostly what your question is. Um, the hope of the critical race theory is to identify in a sociological and historical way how our whole society, if you want to use the word, has been infected by subliminal racism. Some of it is overt, like police brutality, okay? Some of it is overt, like the jail system, right? But we have other systems in place, such as in the educational systems, such as in the financial world, such as in the climb for career goals in the workplace. We even have systematic racism, and we found out in the 60s that it was even in the restaurants, the places that you would go. We found out that even in the 80s that people were still being followed around in stores, not because the people themselves were racist, but because of the systematic racism and the stereotypical, the subliminal, subtle innuendos that all black people were thieves. Even today, when we see a black man, a young man running in society, there is that subliminal message that he must be running away from a crime or on his way to a crime. So these subtle things that have found their way and encroached into our society and implemented into our society, people that do not feel the effect of those subtle innuendos basically have a blind eye that they even exist. So like any type of other human development theory, it talks about the stages of the development of racism, the impact of it, how it looks, and what are the outcomes. And so the only people that will get a benefit from this study of this theory is those who nowadays they call it unconscious bias. So I want to give you opportunity to respond to what I've just said.
I appreciate all the information that you have presented. My question centers around the average person, such as myself, Jane Doe. How do I even entertain that I can change a history of difference, a history of racism, a history of bias? How do I make a difference? And the other comment I was concerned about is you have presented a wealth of information, which I appreciate. But my question to you, second question to you, is how does the average person, the Jane Does of the world, and there's a million of us, know which media program is presenting the truth? and reporting the truth. How can I decipher what is true or what is slighted based upon that reporting station?
Well, let's take the second question first. The second question is, how does the average person listening to the news on television or reading a newspaper or hearing it on the radio, how do they know the difference between the big lie and the truth? Right? The thing of it is, when we were growing up, Captain Wells, pretty much what the news reporters said was pretty much factual. It might have had a little yeast in it, but people had integrity in reporting. That is no longer the case. So the average John Doe, Jane Doe, whoever, can no longer listen to the news and take it as the gospel, because that era does not exist any longer. So if in fact that we want to be responsible adults, when we hear information or receive information, we're going to have to research that information in order for us to make a decision whether we want to believe it or not. Now there are medias, and we are going to introduce one next week called fact checkers. They have fact checkers, and they are on the internet. Um, most of the information that is non-factual will not have a fact check component to it. But we can no longer just turn on the television and believe whatever somebody says. And that is the very reason why I started putting clips on my broadcast, so that people know that I'm not making this stuff up. I'm not just on here being as one of the senators, one of the representatives in Congress. I'm not going to call her name. I'm not going to give her enough credit to even call her name. But she just opens her mouth and spews out stuff with no basis of facts. When Rudy Giuliani and the other lady lawyer was talking about the Great Steal, and they quoted a whole lot of things, but they didn't present facts. They didn't say you can look at so forth, so on, and so on, and you can see facts. They never presented the facts of the court cases that they filed. They talked about them, but they never said court cases are public records. If somebody filed a lawsuit against another person, that's a public record. You can verify that. And if you want someone to believe your point of view, then you need to refer them to the facts. So what it is, these news outlets knows that most persons, Jane Doe, John Doe, whatever, they're not going to spend time looking up what they say. So they play to whoever will believe them. But that's what got us in the mess we in now. We can no longer do that. We can no longer trust whatever we hear on the radio to be true and factual. So we're going to have to educate our friends, our neighbors, our families on how to fact check what you hear, and then decide whether you want to believe it or not. So we have to retrain our community, because you can't do it. You can't. And it's easy to check the facts. Do you not know that it's so easy to check the fact that the election was not stolen? But people want to believe it because they put their hopes and trust into a man. And so they're not open to facts, let alone opinions. Okay? So that's my remedy for that. Now back to the other question about What can you do? And tell me if I'm getting this right. Did you ask what can Jane Doe, Joe do to change racism in America? Was that your question?
Yes, correct. How
Okay.
the average person
The average
live
person.
from day to day with the circumstances that exist that they don't even know exist.
Exactly.
Change what they are not. I'm not talking about people such as yourself, people such as Dr. Sparks, the intelligent people that is out there in these professions, especially in theology. I'm talking about the average person. How do I change something that I'm not aware of? I just know I got to exist. And I do it from day to day.
Yeah. And I'm gonna tell you one thing. Uh change is not easy. Change is not easy. Let's go back to slavery. Okay? Let's go back to slavery. Reese, I know, but I can't hear you.
Heard about it, I'm aware of it, but as an average American citizen, what do I do?
I want to give you an example if you let me.
Yes, ma'am.
Juneteenth, we just made it into a national holiday, right? That was July 19th. You muted. You, you muted yourself. You gotta unmute.
June
So
19th.
June 19th, yeah. So the way it came about is that the laws had freed the slaves, but in Texas, somehow the news hadn't got to all of the plantations. Okay, all right, that's so. But when they went down there and told them, say, hey, guess what? You guys are free. And the slaves said, some of them said, okay, well, I'm free to do what? I can't read. I can't write. I don't know how to do anything but to be a slave. And so they chose to stay on the plan. Some of them chose to stay in a state that they knew that they could survive. So what was the challenge is they needed to be re-educated, revamped, retrained so that they could go out and exercise their freedom. So we don't have plantations necessarily today, but our people are still in slavery. And the same remedy for those people in Texas is the same remedy for Jane Doe, John Doe, and everybody else that doesn't know how to manage this system where they can overcome racism for themselves. So, in order for us to help those that need the help, we need to understand the system. We need to understand what racism is. And we need to take responsibility for those that look like us and don't know what we know. We need to let them know that they're free. We need to let them know about the things that they can do. We can't wait for Biden to do it. We can't wait for Kamala Harris to do it. But we need to be concerned about those that look like us that don't have the advantage that we do. And so we need to have systems in place so we can, and some of us don't want help. Some of us don't want to be free because they're comfortable where they are. But the change will come through education. Number one, again, some people that are white are what did I call it? The bias, unintentionally biased because of their training. And that's where the critical race theory comes in, is to put it on the table without talking about the Ku Klux Klan and the Proud Boys. We're talking about a system. Insurance. You pay more for insurance in most cases than white people do, simply because you're black. And that's still going on today. You pay more interest on your mortgage simply because you're black. And that's going on today. But if you don't know that, you don't know what to do about it. And Biden and Kamala and them, they can only do so much. But knowledge is power. And so we can no longer be asleep, and that's why the people talking about woke. They're talking about woke. Now I don't go along with the necessarily the woke, but we got to wake up. You meaning not you, but you all that are listening. You got to stand up and take responsibility. Excuse me, for somebody other than yourself. When we see these children out on the street, Captain Wells, when you and I were little children, you couldn't get away with doing wrong in the community because the neighbors would tell your parents if they saw you doing something wrong. They took responsibility for you, and you were not their responsibility. But they felt obligated to make sure that you was doing the right thing. Am I right about it?
Yes, I hear you. But based upon what goes on today, what is your plan to change not just my little small community, but the whole United States, the Black communities, the communities known as minorities? How do you change or begin to change and inform these people of what is truthfully going on?
Well, we need to educate. We have to educate, and all of us have a level. Some of us can deal with the everyday Jane Doe and John Doe and the people in our little nucleus, and then some of us can deal with the people in our city, and then some can deal with the people in our state. But it starts with each person that knows better taking on, taking on a responsibility. There's plenty of groups. We're going to be developing a website. Matter of fact, my church just joined a group this week called COPE. And I didn't know about this group until this week. But information came to me that they're supporting changes in this is in a Christian environment, in the church environment, and it's talking about meeting with those that do not look like me, and meeting with a purpose. What is the purpose? To talk about racism and talk about how we have been divided because of how we look. And that's an arena that I can walk in and do something about because I'm in that arena. But we need everybody that can take responsibility to take responsibility. And those that can educate them and support them doing what they do. And until we take the bull by the horn ourselves and not wait for the government to come in and change our society, because that's not going to do it. We got to do it one-on-one. We got to do it one-on-one. We got to start with our children. If they want to allow critical race theory to be taught in the school, then we need to teach it to our own children. We need to teach it to our grandchildren, our nieces and our nephews. We need to tell them. They don't understand. They don't know anything about what we've been through. You and I marched with Martin Luther King and Cassius Clay and all this kind of stuff and freedom marchers. They don't know nothing about that. We saw people beat. We saw people hurt or harm. They seen it on TV. It's not real to them. It's not a reality because they can go wherever they feel like they can go wherever and do whatever, and they cannot. It's a false slavery. And racism, systematic racism, is genocide. It is a purposeful plan to annihilate people of whatever you feel like race need to be annihilated. The American Indian was the first victim of white racism in America. And all we got to do is turn around and look and see what happened to them, to see what the enemy have in store for us. And it's systematic. The tribes, they're on the reservation. That's systematic racism. They have no say in our electoral process. They have no rights as an American citizen, and this is their land. And if we don't do something about it, and we don't teach our children to stand up, we got so many laws on the book. Do you know that we need to teach the laws, the amendments, and the Constitution, the real Constitution, to our children? There's enough laws on the book to protect us as minorities. But we don't hear about it. So it starts with us. It starts with me. It starts with you and everybody else that has a passion for their people to be free. And that's what we've lost. We've been indoctrinated with cocaine, heroin. They want to keep marijuana flowing. They want to keep us sedated and medicated so that we can't think. Our young people with that vape and all that mess, and they think they're doing something, and all the while they're being victimized and don't even know it. And we don't teach it in the church because of the lie of separation of church and state. That's a lie. And how many people repeat that? You got people in Congress that know better, and they repeating it. People in the White House, the governor's house, the teachers in the classroom. And it does not say that. That is not the First Amendment. But now, I shouldn't be the only one saying that. So to answer your question, it's going to take an effort, but we have to individually make a commitment that we are going to be an agent of change. You might not be able to change the Senate. You might not be able to change who's in the White House, but you can change right around the environment that you have. And you need education to do that. You need to be able to educate people on the level where they can understand. So you being an educated woman, a former officer of the court, you used your position to educate people who they are and what they had rights to. And everybody that's so-called disenfranchised or non-white person has an opportunity, Priscilla, Captain Wells, to do just that. But will we do it? Will we do it? Is the fire gone? Have they beat us down so much that we say, oh, well, this is how it is and this is how it's going to be?
Okay. Well, I think that your last statement is the battle. That people are so commonplace that they're not willing to educate, to inform what is going on. You speak about an agent of change, and I have to acknowledge that you're never too old, you're never too whatever to learn. Your last show about Jim Crow, I found it very fascinating and informative. I have to acknowledge, no, I was not taught the true philosophy and what happened and who was Jim Crow. I wasn't taught that. I have learned it over the years as an adult, seeking information. Uh, it wasn't taught to me in elementary school, high school, college, post grad. Uh, no, I wasn't taught the struggles and the truth about minorities, especially Black people who look like me. So that was so refreshing to me. Now, if I am enlightening about learning about the past, I don't think that the average, and I have to repeat, Jane and John Doe, is receptive to what your message is.
You're right.
And I don't know how to go about that except for a case by or person by case by person. I think I'm at work, or a person by person basis, where we don't know. If I don't know at my age, then I know that my friends, children, relatives don't know. So how do we bridge those gaps? Is my question.
Well, when we talk about evangelism in the church, we say each one reach one. It's overwhelming when you look at the populace and Martin Luther King. You know, we can appreciate his efforts because he looked at the whole and he thought he could bring a change the nation, and he had a great effect. But what I'm saying is that was Martin Luther King. I don't think that the change is going to come like that this time. I think that people who have the understanding that we are not free physically, I mean, we're free spiritually, we're free if we understand that we're not free. You understand? But the people of color, are still in slavery in the United States of America. It's just a pretty slave. It's just a pretty plantation. We can get our nails done. We can get our hair. We can fly. We can do this. We can do that. And so we think it's a facade. Oh, I'm free. No, I want everything that God has for me, and I want everything in the Constitution that is for me. I don't want nobody to tell me how much of the Constitution I can have and be happy with it. I'm not going to be happy until I can exercise all my rights, because somebody decided that this is a nation under God, indivisible, with what? Liberty and justice for all. And I ain't going to back down off of that. But we got to understand, just like in the Juneteenth, just like in Texas, when some of the slaves would not come off of the plantation, we got people that do not care whether we get another ounce of freedom or not. They happy with what they got. And we just going to have to move past them. We're not going to be able to reach every person of color. We got people march with the evangelicals because they said they're against abortion. Well, how are you against abortion when they're killing people in the street and won't nobody say anything about that? What life is better than another life? Is the unborn life greater than a young African American person in the street, or Latino, or they're killing Chinese people, knocking them down in the street? You're telling me that that's not important? You stuck on abortion? So we got people that don't want to change. But we got people that don't understand that there needs to be a change, and those are the ones that we need to reach.
Well, that's what I'm saying about how do you cross that bridge? And it's not so much about people don't want to change, they don't understand the need for change.
Right.
And creating that interest and creating that understanding is what needs to happen in our community. And I think that the Christian community is one place to start.
Hmm. Yep.
Because there's so much that goes on, and people don't understand or don't know what the truth is based upon mass media and what goes on in today's technical world.
Well, the Bible talks about in the last days the people will believe a lie rather than the truth, and that's what you have. So we see the Bible coming, you know, to pass, just as it says. But we have an empowerment from God. And we need to understand that talking about injustice is not outside of the realm of God. As I put in my PowerPoint, the kingdom of heaven suffered violence, but the violent take it by force. That's in the Bible. We have to take it by force. That's my license right there. And I'm not talking about murdering and killing people. I'm talking about we have to stand up and be forceful about what's right. We have to defend the weak and the helpless, whether they look like us or don't look like us. That's our job as the church. And God is with us. But who will stand? Who will? We have to come out of selfishness and see that this is a generational thing. This is a blight on this country. I was born here. I really don't like being called an African American. I'm an American. Why do I have to be an African American? I ain't never been to Africa. I was born in Herman Kiefer Hospital in Detroit, Michigan, 1948. I'm not no African. I'm not against African, but I have to be called an African American because the system doesn't want to recognize me as 100% citizen of this country. They don't call white people white Americans. And when they say patriot, they ain't talking about you and me. And if I tell black people that I don't want to be called African American, they say I'm a sellout. I ain't never been to Africa. I'm going, but I ain't never been. My mama wasn't born in Africa. My daddy wasn't born in Africa. My daddy's mama wasn't born in Africa. My mama's daddy wasn't born in Africa. Why am I African American? How come I can't be an American?
Well, I have to say, make my last comment. As a retired veteran of the United States Air Force, I have to let you and your audience and the community know freedom is not free.
It's not free. Talk about it. Talk about it.
Freedom
Everybody
is
mad. They're mad with Biden about bringing them people home from 20 years. 20 years. You mad? But you didn't take your butt over there. They're mad because he's bringing those people home from 20 years. We've been in Afghanistan. 20 years. Okay? But the people that's mad, they not volunteering to go back over there and take their place. Freedom is not free, and it doesn't just deal with you and yours, you know. In order for us to be free here, we have to fight the enemy abroad so they don't get over here. And that's the way it is in America. If we want to be free, we got to choose our stand beyond our own self. You can't be free by yourself. Just you by yourself, you free. And me by myself, I'm free. And another problem we have is that when we get a certain amount of income, we feel that we have arrived as a 100% American. That's not true. It's not true. One question I want to pose to you as we get ready to go is, what do you feel about the Civil War or the coup that was being plotted by the 45th president? Did you hear about that? I want to bring up something on that while I'm talking about that. So here, back here, the Joint Chiefs of Staff talked about General Miley was reported worried about Trump might attempt a coup. So back in January, I let everyone know that the Spirit of the Lord let me know that people were planning a civil war. I even put clips on there where Jim Baker said that if Donald Trump was impeached, that they was going to, the real Christians was going to start a war, and different religious leaders that was calling for civil war. And so our last discussion point of today is, what is your opinion about a civil war starting over these lies of our 45th president?
Well, number one, our former president put in place what he wanted to put in place. That was confusion, disruption, and division. And that is what he wanted, and that is what he created. However, it did not come out to be the plan that he had put in place. So I'm just going to wind it up because I know you don't have but a couple of minutes. But he has left more distinction and division among the Congress, the Senate, and the community and the United States of America. No, it was in place because he wanted to become a dictator.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to discard democracy and what this country is supposed to be about. It just didn't work his way. But he has in place more corruption, more division. And that is what I am saying. We have to, religious community, every person in the world, in the United States, has to wake up, be informed, and at least try to have a better understanding of what's going on.
Well, that would be wonderful. They made a statue of him in February, a golden statue of him that they had at the CPAC. You guys can look it up on the internet, so don't take my word for it. And look up the CPAC statue they made of Donald Trump, the golden statue with his little shorts, little shorts on. I'll show you a picture of it next week. And he had a wand. I thought it was so interesting that they put a wand in his hand. And I thought, how depraved these people are, that the image that they put a wand, not a gavel or something, professional or something like. They put a wand in his hand, and that magically. And I told people when he said, "Make America great again," that it's not, and Donald Trump is just a representation of a move afoot in the country. He was just the spearhead, but the backing behind him was to take this country back from the people of color, and not just you African Americans. They don't want none of you people of color in no type of position of authority, and least of all women of color. So,
But I have
the
one comment. They
yes.
might have erected a statue to Donald Trump, but look at how many statues of civil rights
Hmm.
individuals have been put down. That's all I
Yeah.
want to say.
You know, Donald Trump made an executive order that got vetoed. Well, I don't know how it got taken back, but he was saying that anybody get caught touching one of those statues, they were going to arrest them on the spot. So I think when Biden got elected, that was one of the first executive orders that he reversed. So Dr. Wells, Captain Wells, we thank you for being on tonight. For my listening audience, Captain Wells, you know, Captain means she's a former uh, military person, and we just want to thank her for her service. And as she was saying, freedom is not free. And if in fact that we are going to reverse the effects of systematic racism designed for civil war, it's going to start with us as individuals. That we have to rise up. And I want to talk to the clergy that have stood silently by those who were opposed to what we're saying. They were very animate that Trump would be in office because they had a hidden agenda. But I want to say to those that are standing for Christ and love everybody. See, God so loved the world that he gave the only begotten son. And we need to stand up. We talk about the gospel being preached. The gospel of one nation under God need to be preached as well. So we want to thank Captain Wells, and we want to invite you all that are listening to come back next week. We got some more videos. I want to encourage you to go and look at the New York Times video on the whole effects of the January 6th insurrection. It is way different than what we even thought. And they show you the methodical way they went about and encircled the Capitol. And it was nothing but God saved those people's life. When you look at that video, it's 40 minutes. You're going to see it was no way that they could escape except God made a way for them to escape. And so we thank God on today. We'll have that video available next portions of it next week. And we're getting ready to close. Would you like to have some final remarks, Captain Wells?
No, I just think that you are presenting the issues that we need to hear, that we need to understand, and that we need to take action about. It's informative and extremely educational, and I just thank God for your work.
Ah, you're so nice. You all know that's my sister, right?
No,
All right. So we getting ready to go. We want to remind you that you can contact KCWG The Truth, the best internet radio on Mars, Jupiter, the world, the globe. And this is presented by Powerhouse Ministries International from Moreno Valley, California. We can be contacted. You can contact me at Dr. Patsy at yahoo.com or 951-961-0594. God bless you, and we'll see you next time in the hour of power in the name of Jesus. Bye.